Hi, this is Kath Gavin. Welcome to my Revelation series. Today we'll focus on Revelation chapter 20, so we're nearing the end of this series. We'll focus particularly on the Millennial Reign. The Millennial Reign of Revelation 20 is one of the most debated passages in the Bible. Many Christians picture it as a future, literal 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. But what if John's vision wasn't predicting a distant future at all? What if it described a reign that began around 1,000 years before Christ's birth and concluded in the 1st century? Today we'll explore the Millennial Reign, beginning with King David and ending with the Roman-Jewish War in AD 66 to 70. Along the way, we'll also identify the dragon, the serpent, the devil, and Satan. Not as one supernatural villain lurking in the future, but as an enduring adversary to God's people in history. In Revelation 20, John speaks of a 1,000-year reign where Satan is bound, the saints reign with Christ. After this period, Satan is released to deceive the nations before final judgment. In apocalyptic literature, numbers are symbolic. The 1,000 years in Revelation 20 represents a complete, divinely appointed period of rule, a long but limited era of covenantal kingship with a distinct beginning and end. The reign begins with King David around 1000 BC. Why? Because David's enthronement marked the start of Israel's united monarchy, the golden age of the Old Covenant kingdom. David was not only king, but also a foreshadowing of the Messiah. God made a covenant with him in 2 Samuel 7, promising that his throne would be established forever. This covenantal kingdom, ruled first by David and then by his successors, was God's messianic reign in its Old Covenant form. During this time, Satan, meaning adversary, was restrained from fully destroying Israel. Though Israel still faced enemies like the Philistines, Assyrians, and Babylonians, the covenant promises and God's protective hand preserved them as his chosen nation. In Revelation 20, John says, the dragon, the serpent, the devil, and Satan was bound so he could no longer deceive the nations. In the Old Testament, Satan is not the name of a fallen angel. The Hebrew word Satan simply means adversary. Anyone or anything opposing God's people or purposes. In 1 Samuel 29 verse 4, Philistine commanders called David an adversary, a Satan to their plans. When David ruled, Israel was at the height of its unity and strength. The adversarial nations, the Satans, could not destroy them. God's covenant promises acted like chains on their enemies. John uses 4 titles in Revelation 20: the dragon, serpent, devil, Satan. Let's have a look at that. The dragon, evoking chaos and empire. In David's day, this imagery fits hostile nations that rose like beasts against God's people. The ancient serpent, recalling Eden's deceiver, symbolic of covenant breakers and false counsel. The devil, from the Greek diabolos, slanderer or false accuser, like those who accused God's prophets. Satan, the generic adversary in Hebrew scriptures. These are not 4 different beings, but 4 descriptions of one role: opposition to God's covenant people, whether through spiritual deception, political oppression, or religious corruption. From David's reign to the time of Christ was roughly a millennium. Not exact, but symbolically 1,000 years of covenant kingship from its zenith to its fulfillment. Even through exile, God preserved his people and his promises. Adversaries came and went, but they never succeeded in erasing Israel's covenant identity. The saints in Revelation 20, those who reign with Christ, can be understood as the faithful covenant people. David's line of kings, the prophets, and the remnant who clung to God's law. Revelation says that after the 1,000 years, Satan would be released to deceive the nations for a short time. This happened in the period leading up to AD 70. Rome's imperial power and apostate Jewish leaders united in opposition to Christ and his followers. False messiahs, corrupt priests, and zealot rebels tore the Jewish world apart. Rome encircled Jerusalem, and the city's own factions turned against each other. The adversary was no longer restrained. The dragon of imperial force, the serpent of covenant betrayal, the devil of slander against Christians, and Satan as the adversary were all unleashed. John's vision of Gog and Magog gathering for war is Old Testament language for the nations rising against God's people. The great white throne in Revelation 20 was God's covenantal judgment on Israel and her enemies. The books were opened, the record of covenant faithfulness and covenant breaking. The dead were judged according to their works. This was not the destruction of planet Earth, but the final, decisive act of the Old Covenant's history. Why does this matter? From David's throne to the destruction of Jerusalem, the millennium reveals God's faithfulness. He restrained his people's adversaries, gave them seasons of peace and blessings, and brought forth the Messiah from David's line. The dragon, serpent, devil, Satan, all adversarial forces are not locked away in a cosmic dungeon waiting for some far future release. They were bound in the Old Covenant era and unleashed in its final generation. Revelation 20 is not a roadmap to the end of the physical world. It's a victory song about the end of an age, the triumph of God's promises, and the unshakable reign of Christ that began long before Bethlehem and will never end. Thank you for watching this whole video. Like if it helped you, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and stay tuned for my next video where we'll continue to explore Revelation 20, particularly the White Throne Judgment. God bless as you study to show yourself approved.